Welcome to Tangible Talks podcast. Today in our biblical character series, we will look closely at Joseph. If you think about having a bad day or that others hate you, you may want to take a look at someone who really experienced a difficult time.
Joseph has been my favorite Old Testament character for years. Looking back, I believe it started when I experienced jealousy from others. It is difficult to do the right thing, have integrity, and try to do the best job possible, especially if others make fun of you and do everything they can to stop your progress. If you think others are going to cheer you on, think again.
Joseph was the 11th son of Jacob and the firstborn of Rachel. Joseph operated differently from his brothers, which made him a favorite of his father Jacob. From an early age, Joseph's purpose and destiny caused him to stand out.
Rich Mullins said this about Joseph. God did not give Joseph any special information about how to get from being the son of a nomad in Palestine to being Pharaoh's right-hand man in Egypt. What he did give Joseph were 11 jealous brothers, the attention of a very loose and vengeful woman, the ability to do the service of interpreting dreams and managing other people's affairs, and the grace to do that faithfully wherever he was.
Joseph was faithful in whatever he did and wherever he was. Join us as we discuss Joseph on Tangible Talks podcast.
Hi, Jana.
Hey, Rita. Hey, listeners. It's good to be back.
I'm so glad you're back. I don't like doing the podcast by myself.
Well, I appreciate that you did it. Just to kind of let our listeners know, last week was just a rough week for me. Those of you who are longtime listeners, every now and then you would have heard my little hype woman in the background with her loud yawns and her little just noises she makes. Sydney, my 14-year-old mini Australian Shepherd, she passed away last week, and it was just very, very difficult for me, and I just could not get in the mindset to record, or it was just survival. So Rita graciously offered to do it on her own, and I think she did a great job. So it's good to be back, still missing Sydney and my little hype woman, but It's just life. It's, we experience the joys and those memories, and it's always hard. Grief and loss is always tough.
I think Joseph is one of your favorite characters, isn't he?
He is. I've been Jacob, not so much. I was much more excited to do Joseph. Joseph is also my favorite Old Testament characters. It's hard to pick. I think he is. Sometimes I go back and forth. I'm like, I don't know. But I do really like Joseph. I find him very inspiring. Truthfully, I don't see a ton of myself in Joseph, but his character and his nature inspires me to be a better person.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that I first identified with Joseph because he had dreams, which, I have dreams, and I keep a little dream journal, which I've shared with you before. It was kind of cool to realize that you can have dreams, and to look at Joseph's story and learn a lot about dreams through that. I agree with you in that his integrity, his consistency and character are just inspiring. But boy, what a great role model. What a great example for us. Mm-hmm. I know exactly where I was when I read that quote by Rich Mullins that I did in the opening. It was May of 2001, and I was going through a really difficult time. The only way out is through. And the life of Joseph just inspired me, and it gave me hope since that particular time, since reading that Joseph quote and going back and reading about Joseph over the years. He consistently encourages me.
Yeah. And we're going to get into this, but just the way, to me, what is most inspiring about Joseph is the way that he rolled with it. He rolled with the punches. Mm-hmm. Whatever life threw at him, he did his best at it, and he did everything he could to honor God in a lot of really tough situations where I think a lot of us would have just kind of given up or been resentful. Just the faith that he displays, it's tremendous, and it's a tremendous inspiration into what God can do with you when you're willing to trust him and go with him.
So let's jump in to Genesis 37. Introduce ourselves or find out who this Joseph is. And a lot of you know who he is, but it's good to come back and read it afresh, and because you generally see things with new eyes. In Genesis 37, and the title of this chapter in my Bible is Joseph's Dreams.
Yeah, mine too.
Okay. But Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed in the land of Canaan. This is the account of Jacob. Joseph, his 17-year-old son, was taking care of the flocks with his brothers. Now he was a youngster working with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. Joseph brought back a bad report about them to his father. So because
Yep.
we've studied Jacob, we know that he left Laban's house and returned to Canaan, returned to the land that where his father lived, where Abraham had lived. Now we're introduced to a 17-year-old who's working with the flocks with his father's wives.
Yep.
And he
And
brought
we've
back a
already
bad
got some
report.
controversy here, right?
Well,
He brought their father a bad report about them.
yeah,
Well, that's going to stir up some feelings, as you can imagine.
right. And so at first, well, he's just a tattletale.
Tattletale, yeah.
But
But we don't have context.
we don't have context.
Did Jacob request that he watch them? We don't know at this point.
We don't know. And so we can only form some opinions and maybe kind of guess. Going into verse 3. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons, because he was a son born to him late in life, and he made him a special tunic, a coat for him. Wow.
Yeah. There's that favoritism again that
And there's more
really plagues
controversy.
this family.
We've already got a lot of drama going on.
Yep. And again, Jacob has been renamed Israel, so
Yeah.
you probably will hear Israel from here on out, but just remember that is Jacob. I know for me, when I first started reading the Bible, how everybody kept changing names in Genesis was so confusing to me. But just know Israel is Jacob.
Joseph was born when Jacob was older. Kind of surprising, because I didn't learn that Jacob was 77 years old when he left his home and went to find a wife.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm already thinking he's old. But this is a different time, a different thing going on. Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons.
Yeah. And then that coat, the ornate robe, just magnifies that,
It
right?
just
symbolizes it.
You can have sympathy for the other sons.
Oh, absolutely.
And you're kind of having sympathy for the other sons, and you're going, you know what, Israel? You're old enough to know better.
To know better, yes.
You should know better. But
Well, and it's kind of like we've already, we've sort of already been around this mountain.
Yeah. Oh,
Here we
it
go
was
again.
Abraham, and then Isaac, then Rebecca with Jacob.
Rebecca, yes. I mean, with Jacob and like he lived this.
We're not looking for what's right or wrong. We're just looking at the story, and it needs to play out. Yeah. Because, as you said earlier, it's too early in the narrative to form an opinion. But we can see where we're going to have conflict with this. This isn't going to turn out too good. We already see that. So when Joseph's brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated Joseph and were not able to speak to him kindly. Whoa, that's a lot to take in.
And so there's that jealousy again, which is not a fruit of the Spirit, not a fruit that we want to bear, because out of jealousy, it just breeds a whole slew of negative thoughts, reactions, actions.
Yeah.
A lot of negativity, a lot of bad things come from jealousy.
They were not able to speak to him kindly.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, I see that a lot today in our politics. Not that I'm going to be political, but it's like people can't speak kindly to one another. What's the underlying thing there? I put myself in Joseph's situation at this time, talking about being isolated, feeling like a sore thumb. Joseph was definitely that.
Yeah.
And
And I
so
do
then,
think a lot of ill talk about people comes from one of two places. I think either it's jealousy or prideful. So when you talk down about someone, it's usually rooted in one of those two things. I know since becoming an adult, that's something that I really try to pay attention to. If I ever catch myself being really negative about someone, I pause and think, well, is this coming from a place of jealousy or a place of pride? Because neither are good.
no. And we kind of skipped over, we just went through really fast that Joseph brought a bad report. His father loved him more, made him a special coat. His brothers hated him and were not able to speak kindly to him. This is the first 4 verses of
Mhm.
Genesis 37, and this is how we're introduced to Joseph.
It really paints the picture of the dynamic, I think,
Yeah,
what's going on though.
it does. It's setting it up perfectly. It's just a perfect introduction to a situation that's not going to turn out too good.
Yeah.
Um,
You get a lot of background and insight into the dynamic in 4 verses
yeah,
that you can piece together.
absolutely. So then in verse 5, we have Joseph had a dream, and when he told his brothers about it, they hated him even more. Joseph just can't do anything right. He said to them, this is Joseph, listen to this dream I had. There we were, binding sheaves of grain in the middle of the field. Suddenly, my sheaf rose up and stood upright, and your sheaves surrounded my sheaf and bowed down to it. Then his brothers asked him, do you really think you will rule over us or have dominion over us? They hated him even more because of his dream and because of what he said.
And this is where, to me, we get a little bit more insight on Joseph's character because I think he has to be somewhat of an optimist, a little bit of sort of a person that just doesn't catch on to other people's feelings about them. So somewhat ignorance is bliss a little bit because if he really knew how much his brothers hated him and I think if he was good at reading the room, he probably wouldn't have shared that dream. You
He's
know what I
seven,
mean?
yeah, but he's 17 years old.
I know, but I just think that this is really highlighting that side of him. And
Mhm.
I can think of people like this who I don't mean it in like a really critical way. It's just some people aren't as good at picking up on other people's feelings about them. And I think Joseph definitely just has more of that probably happy go lucky, just, doesn't think about all of the negativity that maybe he is receiving or he hasn't fully picked up on it himself.
Yeah. Well, there are some people who will say that Joseph was bragging and he had to tell them about his dream.
I don't read it that way. I
I
just
don't
read it as a
either.
17-year-old boy who's maybe a little clueless about social awareness and is just more of a like, oh, look at this dream I had. He just wanted to share it. He
Well,
just wanted to share his dream with his brothers. I
exactly.
don't interpret it as a bragging
I
manner.
I find that, if I draw something or if I'm creating something, I can't wait to share. I'm excited about sharing it. And it's not from a look at me and look what I did, but it's like, wow, this is
Yeah,
kind of cool.
kind of excited about it. Yes.
Excited about it. Again, 17. But notice this dream does not need an interpretation. His
Right.
brothers got it immediately. Joseph did not tell them what he thought it meant. You think that we're going to bow down to you and serve you? So they totally understood the meaning of this dream. No one had to interpret it, but they hated him even more. My. He had another dream and told it to his brothers.
And see, again, this is where social awareness.
Yes.
Clearly Joseph's not, he hadn't developed it yet.
Well, but you know what? When you get to the end of the story, you see that it really was important for him to share this in the beginning. It no one liked it, but his sharing it just added to why it is that he went on the road that he went on. It's not that it made him go on that road. It's just was part of it. Joseph said, "Look, I had another dream. The sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me." Mm. When he told his father and his brothers, his father rebuked him, saying, "What is this dream that you had? Will I, your mother, and your brothers really come and bow down to you?" His brothers were jealous. And this is the first time we hear the word jealous.
Mm.
And just as you said, you can see it. You can see it coming. His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept in mind what Joseph said, which I think is pretty interesting. And when I read that, sometimes I think about how Mary pondered things in her heart, wondered how it would be, wondered what would happen.
Yeah, I kind of read it as I think Israel or Jacob probably was very well versed in Jacob's dream. I mean, sorry, in Joseph's dreams, and he knew. I'm going to guess that Joseph had been having dreams prior to this, and that some of those dreams may more than likely have come true, and that's why these dreams bothered them all so much. I don't think
Well,
he took it lightly.
no, and we have to remember that Jacob, Israel, had dreams. He had
Hmm.
dreams about the stairway to heaven. He was given in a dream directions about how to multiply the flock. He was given a dream to leave and to return home. So Jacob is a dreamer also. When you're a dreamer, and someone who has a dream says, "Hey, I had a dream," your ears just perk up.
Yeah.
You because you understand what they're saying. So Jacob also was a dreamer, which may be why he was so fond of Joseph. So two dreams. And later on, when we get into part two of Joseph, we'll talk about the importance of two dreams and what they mean. But there's no need to do that right now. When Joseph reached Shechem, when his brothers had gone to graze their father's flocks near Shechem, Israel said to Joseph, "Your brothers are grazing the flocks near Shechem. Come, I will send you to them." And Joseph's answer, I just want to stop and let you hear what Joseph said. Joseph said, "I'm ready." So Jacob said to him, "Go now and check on the welfare of your brothers and of the flock, and bring me word." I think that this is pretty much how Jacob spoke to Joseph. And that's why he brought back a bad report
Yeah. I do
before.
too.
I think this lets us see that, okay?
Mhm. It
So
provides that
Jacob,
insight because early on you're like, was he just being a tattletale? But no, I think this brings us to light that this is probably a pattern.
yes, check on the welfare of your brothers and the flocks, and bring me word. So Jacob trusted this 17-year-old to go find them and find out what's going on. Are they taking care of the flock? Everything okay? Are they behaving themselves, And so Jacob sent him from the valley of Hebron. Now I want to stop here and say this is the last conversation Jacob has with Joseph. for 22 years. And the last thing that Joseph said to his father was, I'm ready. And that just really hit me, that Joseph said, I'm ready. I don't think he knew what he was fully saying, but this, as we know, if we've read the story, and we will see, this is the last time that Joseph sees Jacob in a very long time. When Joseph reached Shechem, a man found him wandering in the field. So the man asked him, What are you looking for? He replied, I'm looking for my brothers. Please tell me where they are grazing their flocks. The man said, They left this area, for I heard them say, Let's go to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. Now Joseph's brothers saw him from a distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. I just want to stop right there.
Yeah, it really escalates. We go from jealousy and not liking him at all to plotting to kill. That's a totally different animal, right? That's a
Yeah,
whole different level of envy.
whole different level. And why? We've got that he was a favorite of his father. We have that he was given a coat. A coat carries a symbolic meaning. It represents authority. Jacob was basically setting Joseph up as a ruler.
Yeah.
And he didn't maybe say it out loud, but by giving the coat, it is a
Well, the
symbol of
coat
it.
and having him report back to him. We have two instances that we know
Mm-hmm.
of that he was reporting back. It really does sound like he was coaching him to rule over them, and pair that with the two dreams. It's probably something they were really concerned about.
And we will see later on that when the prodigal son returned home, the father put a coat on him. It's a symbol. So we have the coat, and we have two dreams, and we have the fact that his character and his integrity is way ahead of his brothers. Instead of saying, well, maybe we should make friends with Joseph, they decide that they want to kill him. It breaks my heart for Joseph. I mean, we've gone from couldn't speak kindly to jealous to murder now. This is where we are. And those steps, I think that those are some really interesting steps. Not being able to speak kindly, jealousy, murder. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just all things that are breeding hatred. You're just inviting darkness into your life,
Yeah.
festering on those types of
Mm.
emotions.
Verse 19. They, the brothers, said to one another, Here comes the master of dreams. And they didn't mean it in a nice way. Come now, let's kill him. Throw him into one of these cisterns, and then say that a wild animal ate him. Then we'll see how his dreams turn out. If you look at this from the point of view of what the enemy wants to do, the enemy wants to kill our dreams. The enemy does not want our dreams, our purpose to prosper. What the brothers said here is not, well, let's kill him, and then he won't tattle on us anymore, and then we'll become Dad's favorite. No, they said, we'll see how his dreams turn out now.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's interesting. And if you look at a bigger picture, because later on we'll see the importance of Joseph's life to all of humanity, to the known world at that time. It wasn't just for Joseph. This is a huge purpose that God is giving to Joseph. And he's giving this dream, and he sees this reaction when he's 17 at the end of his time with his family. Joseph doesn't know it, but when he looks back, he will be able to see. When Reuben heard this, he rescued Joseph from their hands, saying, Let's not take his life. Reuben continued, don't shed blood. Throw him into this cistern that is here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him. Reuben said this so that he could rescue Joseph from them and take him back to his father. When Joseph reached his brothers, they stripped him of his tunic, of his special coat that he wore. The first thing they did was took away
that coat,
that authority, that special relationship. I think you can look at this in ways that the enemy attacks us individually too. They want to get our reputation and take away any authority, anything that we have. Then they took him and threw him into the cistern. Now the cistern was empty. There was no water in it. When they sat down to eat their food, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were carrying spice, balm, and myrrh down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, what profit is there if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites. But let's not lay a hand on him, for after all, he is our brother and our flesh. His brothers agreed. Oh my.
I know, this is strange, like clearly they show zero remorse. They're eating after doing this. Like there is zero regret to throwing him in the cistern. Like
Yes, and so then they go, well, maybe we shouldn't kill him, so let's just sell him.
we don't really know why Reuben left, but he's not there. We're going to find that out in just a second. Maybe he was going to go tell I don't know. We don't know why he left.
We don't know. We don't know at this time. A lot of things we do not know at this time. And I want to say, as a tangible takeaway right now, there are a lot of things in our life when we're in a struggle, going through opposition, going through slander, we don't see the whole picture. We can't see it at that moment. And it looks completely unfair, and it is. But if you have faith and if you believe, then you will see that God will take what others meant to destroy you and work it to your good if you'll hang in there with him. And hey, hanging in there, sometimes it's just by a thread.
Yeah.
It is a daily, pushing through. So when the Midianite merchants passed by, Joseph's brothers pulled him out of the cistern and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. Wonder how they divided that. The Ishmaelites then took Joseph to Egypt. Later, Reuben returned to the cistern to find that Joseph was not in it. He tore his clothes, which is a symbol of grief, of mourning, returned to his brothers and said, the boy isn't there. And where can I go? So they took Joseph's tunic, his coat, killed a young goat, and dipped the tunic in the blood. Then they brought the special tunic to their father and said, we found this. Determine now whether it is your son's tunic or not. And so now we've got deception going on.
Covering it
up. Lying.
I mean, what a terrible thing to put your father through too. Like, that he didn't die. He was not devoured by a ferocious animal, but you're going to let your father believe that. I mean, what a horrible thing to put your father through, It's just
it just increases, doesn't it? It just gets worse.
Which it so often does.
Yes, because are you going to go up and say, hey, here's the coat of our brother, but he's not coming back because we made 20 pieces of silver off of him.
Deception will build upon itself. It may start off as a small thing, but it will build.
It will build, and it's something you're going to have to live with It will not leave.
And that's why that saying, the truth will set you free,
Yes.
because you do become imprisoned in your own chain of lies.
Yeah. And you become a slave to it.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm just going to interject this right now. When I was young, I had a difficulty telling the truth, and I have no idea why. It became such a habit that I would just exaggerate. I would just lie instead of telling the truth. It became so easy. I had to practice telling the truth to break that habit. I would tell a lie, and then I would go back and say, that was a lie, and I don't know why I told you that. But this is the truth. Forgive me. And then it would be when I was speaking, I would realize that I was starting to lie, and I would stop myself. Then before I spoke, I would make sure I was telling the truth. Now it is far easy to tell the truth. I do not want to deceive. I don't want to lie. But it's a habit that you can get into. And if you use this story as an example, these brothers never got over what they did to Joseph, ever. It
Yeah.
stayed with them. The shame, the deception, it stayed with them. They couldn't let it go. Joseph let it go, but they couldn't.
And we're constantly practicing one behavior or another. So if we're lying and that becomes a thing, then we're flexing that muscle. That's the muscle that we're practicing. Truth and honesty is also, it's a muscle memory. Like, yeah, that's
It
what you're
is.
practicing. If that's what you're doing on a daily basis, then that's going to get easier with time.
He, Jacob, Israel recognized it and exclaimed, "It is my son's tunic. A wild animal has eaten him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and daughters stood by him to console him, but he refused to be consoled. "No," he said, "I will go to the grave mourning my son." So Joseph's father wept for him. Now in Egypt, the Midianites sold Joseph to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard. And this is Genesis 37 and the introduction to Joseph.
Yep. And this is really where the divine intervention really starts to take effect, I think, that you really start to begin to see that. So 37, you have such an intro and a build up into how Jacob became into this position. I mean, sold by his brothers who almost murdered him but didn't.
How Joseph did, yes. We see they could have killed him, but by happenstance,
They
these
didn't.
people came by and they didn't.
Yep.
And then, by happenstance, he happened to be sold as a slave into Potiphar's house, one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain
Mm-hmm.
of the guard. It still's not a pretty story, but
No.
you can see the redemption. You can, only because we know the whole story. But looking back, you can see where God did intervene.
Yeah. Those little fingerprints, as you call them.
Yeah, fingerprints of God. And you're like, well, why didn't God just stop those brothers from doing that? Well, we have what's called free will, and we have a choice. And those brothers chose through their jealousy, their envy, their hate, they chose this.
I think a
And
lot of people, sometimes myself included, really struggle with that predestination versus free will.
yeah,
I think that that can be a very confusing topic for especially new Bible studiers.
well, it can be confusing for me.
It can
And
be. It
my,
is confusing, but I think especially for for people who aren't as well versed with reading the Bible, or who haven't been believers for a long time and have really seen a lot of examples of it, it is a very confusing topic. That go, well, God can do anything. Well, why would he let this happen? I think that's a very common question that a lot of non-believers face.
Maybe this is the purpose of this story, to highlight this so that we can see. We can see the purpose of God that overrides, that works within our brokenness, fulfills his purpose, God's purpose. And in the brokenness of us and in our bad decisions, he still loves us and redeems us.
Mm-hmm.
But we still have that. Maybe that's one of the reasons that we have the story of Abraham and Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, David, is to show how human they are and how we fail, but how through all of that, God still is going to work his plan. Maybe that's one of the reasons for these.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think it helps to understand it better. I mean, I know it's helped me understand it better.
Yeah, which is why, I love these stories. I love the Old Testament stories. So let's hit Genesis 39.
Okay.
Joseph and Potiphar's wife. Now, Joseph
Oh,
had been,
mercy.
I know, this is where you'd get suspenseful music. Now, Joseph had been down to Egypt. An Egyptian named Potiphar, an official of Pharaoh, and the captain of the guard. That's a repeat. God's catching us up again, but it's a repeat of exactly what was at the end of 37. Potiphar purchased him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him there. The Lord was with Joseph. If you want to know how Joseph made it through his brothers wanting to kill him, but instead just selling him and getting rid of him, being taken to a completely foreign country. I mean, it would relate to human trafficking today. The Lord was with Joseph. Wow. He was successful. Joseph was successful and lived in the household of the Egyptian master. His master observed that the Lord was with him. Potiphar could see that the favor of God was on him. Probably similar to what the brothers saw, that he was favored by the father nonetheless, okay? But what Potiphar does is he's going to be wise and use it to his advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Potiphar observed that the Lord was with him and that the Lord made everything he was doing successful. So Joseph found favor again. Joseph found favor in his sight and became his personal attendant. Potiphar appointed Joseph overseer of his household and put him in charge of everything he owned. From the time Potiphar appointed him over his household and over all that he owned, the Lord blessed the Egyptian household for Joseph's sake. Whoa. Whoa.
Yeah, powerful. Powerful
Powerful,
verses right there.
deep, huge, just huge. And I just want to say, man, you may be working for someone who isn't a believer. You're a believer. They're not a believer. If you are faithful, God will bless them through you, and maybe by that, they'll become a believer. It didn't happen for Potiphar, but it could.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I do think that that's a very tangible takeaway, right? That
Mhm.
you may be in a role that is not exactly where you would like to be. You may be doing a job that's not exactly what you'd like to be doing. But if you do that and your heart is in it and you're really trying to do the best job you can to glorify the Lord and not for whoever you're working for that you may not agree with, or who knows what it is, you can still prosper in that, and God can still bear a lot of really good fruits through you.
Yeah. And it is really for your own benefit that
Yeah.
you have integrity and character. So the blessing of the Lord was on everything he had, both in his house and in the fields. So Potiphar left everything he had in Joseph's care. We're going to see this one repeated 2 more times. He gave no thought to anything except the food he ate. That's all Potiphar had to be concerned with. Oh, ask Joseph.
Yeah. Sounds like a
Joseph
good deal to
knows.
me.
Hey, it's a good deal. Now, Joseph was well built and good looking. Mm. Soon after these things, his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, "Have sex with me." Now, I just want to remind everybody that we are reading scripture and this is human. We want to justify it. We want to skim over some of these parts that we're thinking, oh, that may be a little rated there and we shouldn't say anything. But this is what Joseph is dealing with. What is Joseph? He's probably 20. He's a 20-year-old man. But he refused. Joseph refused, saying to his master's wife, "Look, my master does not give any thought to his household with me here, and everything he owns he has put in my care. There is no one greater in this household than I am. He has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. So how could I do such a great evil and sin against God?"
Yeah, I think that's an important note there.
Yeah.
He doesn't say such a wicked and evil thing against Potiphar. He said against God,
Yes.
because that's where his focus was all along. He
Well,
didn't get bogged down in the weeds with, oh, if I keep Potiphar happy, well, then I can keep this status. And yet there was never any of that. He was doing things for God.
and look at the contrast between what Joseph said here and what Judah said before. Hey,
Hmm.
let's not get blood on our hands. Let's just sell him.
Yeah.
Didn't care what was right, what was evil.
It was
But
selfish. Yeah, it was a selfish endeavor.
yes, but obviously, Joseph is grounded in the principles of God.
Hmm.
You can just tell by his answer. And before this, we do not have any scripture that said, and Joseph walked with God and he
Yeah.
prayed continuously. We don't have
Yeah,
that.
we don't know.
You don't have to, because this tells you right here. So, how could I do such a great evil and sin against God? That tells you Joseph's relationship with God.
Right.
Even though she continued to speak to Joseph day after day, he did not respond to her invitation to have sex with her. One day, he went into the house to do his work when none of the household servants were there in the house. She grabbed him by his outer garment, saying, "Have sex with me." But he left his outer garment in her hand and ran outside. This is twice Joseph's
Yeah.
had his garment
Twice that
removed,
his
isn't it?
cloak has been ripped off of him, right?
Twice. Yeah, there's something to that. That's twice. When she saw that he had left his outer garment in her hand and had run outside, she called for her household servants and said to them, "See, my husband brought in a Hebrew man to us to humiliate us. He tried to have sex with me, but I screamed loudly. When he heard me raise my voice and scream, he left his outer garment beside me and ran outside." She's
Deception.
deception, a lie. This is it not very similar to what his brothers told Jacob?
Oh, very similar.
Very
And I just
similar.
think, you just know. You know the servants in the household. They know. They've seen, they've witnessed, they know the actions of the woman. I just have to think that they know that this isn't true. you know?
Yes. But
Because
what are
like,
they going to do because it's
well,
Potiphar's
right.
wife?
But and I think we'll even see that a little bit more as I'll let you continue. But I just think everybody knew that
And
this wasn't true.
and there's a price to pay for confronting evil. And Joseph, he just ran. He ran. There are times when you just have to run. You're going to pay the price, but you run. No one else was willing to pay the price. And I think even Potiphar knew.
Yeah. I do too. And once you get to the verses, I think it becomes really obvious.
Yeah. So when his master heard his wife say, "This is the way your slave treated me," he became furious. Joseph's master took him and threw him into prison. Ugh, second time, Joseph's been grabbed and hadn't done anything wrong. He's thrown into prison. The other time he was thrown into a hole. It's probably the same thing. The place, but here's
Here you
something
go.
that's
Yep.
interesting. Here you go. The place where the king's prisoners were confined. So he was there in the prison.
I think that there's so many notes here that he was
Mm-hmm.
furious. I think he's furious because I think he's furious with his wife, to be honest,
And he's going
because
to
he
lose.
knows that he's going to lose the Lord's favor.
Yes.
Because if he was truly furious with Joseph, he would have had him killed. He'd have had, he wouldn't have put him in the prison with the king's prisoners. That wouldn't have happened.
But his appearance, what would people say? What would people do if
Oh,
they knew that his wife was trying to have sex with a 20-something-year-old boy
Mhm.
that was in there and that was
Yeah,
his slave?
got to do something, and he's furious about the whole
And
situation.
he's furious because he didn't have to be concerned with anything except for the
Yeah,
food that
except
he
his
ate.
food.
A lot to take away. But the Lord was with Joseph. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him kindness. He granted him favor in the sight of the prison warden. The warden put all the prisoners under Joseph's care. He was in charge of whatever they were doing. The warden did not concern himself with anything that was in Joseph's care because the Lord was with him, and whatever he was doing, the Lord was making him successful. I want to point out he's in prison. He's in prison, but the Lord is with him.
Yeah. And now this is the third time that he's been
Yes.
granted favor and authority over others.
Uh,
Because really, his father Israel did the same thing
yes.
with his brothers.
And it's a consistent pattern. And if
Mhm.
you say things like, "This always happens to me," take note of it. I'm sure Joseph's going, "This always happens to me. I can't seem to escape it." Take note of that. I wanted to end it here because I wanted to end it where it seems like it's a hopeless place. It
Mhm.
seems as if all hope is lost because I've been here in my life in a hopeless place. And I'm certain many of you who are listening have been or are in a hopeless situation. I want to encourage you and give you a couple of tangible takeaways. Where is God? Where is God in this? When you are in a hopeless situation, where is God? Well, God is in the same place he was when he told Abraham, "Fear not, Abram, I am your shield and the one who will reward you in great abundance." And he told Abram this when Abram had no children. And before Abram had children, God said, "Know for certain that your descendants will be strangers in a foreign country. They will be enslaved and oppressed for 400 years. But I will execute judgment on the nation that they will serve. Afterwards, they will come out with many possessions." Now, this is what God told Abraham back in Genesis 15. So, where is God? He already knows. He already knows where you are. God has a plan. And in this situation, God has a plan to go before the famine and save not only children of Israel, but the known world. God's vision is beyond ours. We can only see that we're in prison. We can only see we're in a hopeless situation right now. But God has a greater vision. And God's vision is beyond ours. And to quote Charles Spurgeon, God has had one son without sin, but he has never had one child without suffering. We all suffer. And so where are you? Where are you right now? We see where Joseph is, but where are you? All humans fight three things. And man, we saw it in this story. We fight pride, lust, and greed. They may show up in different forms in our life, but these three are the pitfalls. They are pitfalls. Joseph's brothers were jealous. And to be jealous is to feel resentful, bitterness, hostility towards someone because of something they have that you don't. In other words, it's greed. We see this with Cain and Abel. So where are you? Are you one of the brothers, or are you the one suffering? Need some advice on how to overcome the three pitfalls of pride, lust, and greed? Well, Jesus tells us very plainly, when you pray, fast, and give, prayer defeats pride because you humble yourself and you say, God, I cannot do this without you. Prayer defeats pride. Fasting defeats lust, and giving defeats greed. Joseph gave all his integrity to whatever he put his hand to, regardless of the circumstances and the surrounding. And I think that's probably why I love Joseph so much. And so this is the end of part 1 of Joseph for me. He's in prison. And we'll pick back up next time with Joseph in prison and see how God changes a hopeless situation and turns it around for the benefit of not only Joseph, but for many, countless many.
Yeah, the true redemption story.
Yeah. I'm going to close in prayer, and my prayer is for those that are listening, for those that are in a hopeless situation, that you take hope, that you remember to pray, that you fast, and that you give. Jesus told us these things, and He is giving us a word to help us and to show us how to overcome. I thank you, Lord, for those that listen. I thank you for your word. I thank you for the example of Joseph, and I thank you so much for Jana and our time to discuss your word, and for those that listen. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in with us today. I know this one ran a little bit long. We hope you stuck around to the end, and we hope you really got some good tangible takeaways out of this one and Joseph's story. Can't wait to meet you back here next week as we finish off his story and learn some more tangible takeaways along the way. Until next time, guys. Bye.
Bye.